Hello and welcome to the first ever Caleb Gannon custom card contest. It's a lot of C's. This was done through my Discord, so if you want to join and want to be part of this and things like this in the future, there's a link in my description to join my Discord. But essentially what I did is I asked my fans to just make custom cards. And the criteria that we're going to be going through for each card is funny, balanced, and spicy. Spicy meaning kind of anything from like interesting to unique or cool. So this card was made by Davey or Darby from my Discord. So I like this so much. He's gonna be like the host of this contest. And before we get started in that, I just want to show a couple cards that I made because they seem pretty fun. Now, the theme for all of these cards is using the logarithm and exponentials in Magic cards, because that's something I haven't really seen happen before. And it's something that's like, you know, it's a very unique and interesting mathematical concept. So the first one is called Unsupervised Learning. It's a legendary enchantment for blue X. Maybe it should be an aura because you're enchanting a player, but we'll just leave it as legendary enchantment. This says if enchanted player would draw n cards from a source other than this card, that player draws n+1 to the X cards instead. So there's a lot of like unique things you can do for this. The most obvious one is for 4 blue, you can enchant someone and it basically makes it so they cannot draw more than 1 card at a time, because n+1 to the 0 is 1 always. So no matter how many cards they should be drawing, it's always going to be 1. So if they have like a lot of divinations or whatever, you can stop that. What gets interesting is when X is greater than 0, because let's say X is like 3. If they would draw 1 card, like they draw their first card for turn, this is going to be n+1 is 2 to the 3. So that's 8 cards, which is a lot. So you could play this on yourself in a storm turn or something like that and just go off. And then if X is like 10, they're just going to deck out in 1 draw step. So if you just play this for 10 mana and enchant someone, as soon as they get to their next turn, they just die. So it's pretty unique and interesting. I don't know how balanced it is, but it's a card I would like to see exist. Very similar to Forced Fruition. Up next is the white card of the cycle called Purgatory. Same mana cost, same enchantment thing. And this says if a source would deal n damage, it does log-based X of n damage instead, rounded down. I guess you need like counters to count this or whatever, but the essential effect of the card is you choose X as you cast this enchantment. And then if a source would do damage, it's log-based X of n damage. So the log of 1 is 0. So, you know, anytime you're doing that type of damage, it wouldn't do anything. And then as you increase the base of the logarithm, it scales how much damage you're taking down significantly. Because like, let's say a source would do like 10 damage. If X is 2, for example, the log base 2 of 10 is like 3.3. So this would round down to 3. The log base 10 of 10 is 1. So it would do 1/10 of the damage. And if it did anything less than 10 damage, it would round down to 0. So this card, if you cast it for a lot of mana, can just make like literally nothing do any damage. Hence why it's called Purgatory. And on a similar vein, we have the red card that is essentially the same effect as this one, but the opposite. So this says if a source would deal n damage, it deals n+1 to the X damage instead. So this, you know, again, if you do, let's say you cast this for X equals 3 and a source does 2 damage, it would instead be 2 + 1 is 3 to the 3, so it would do 27 damage. That's a lot of damage. So, you know, it's like there's a lot of effects that are like this does triple damage or quadruple damage, but exponential scaling is something that I'm kind of interested in. Anyway, that's enough of my own cards. Let's get into the cards that you guys made. So I'm going to start with the funny ones, and it kind of makes sense for me to start with a showdown between the 2 Caleb Gannon cards that people made. So the first one is Caleb Gannon the Storm God. You've seen it, but it's whenever you draft a land that taps for more than 1 color of mana, you win the game, I guess. And whenever you draft a card draw spell, you also win the game. So this card is very, very powerful. I don't appreciate that they gave me 0 power. I don't know how I feel about that one, but I do win the game pretty much no matter what, although I don't actually know how this works because you have to have it in play and then draft. So functionally this is a 3 mana 0/5 that has no text because I don't know how you have a creature while drafting. So not super fond of that. Gotta give me more power than that. Then we have Ganon the God of Storm. Very ridiculous mana cost. Phyrexian, blue, black, 1. All right, and then when Ganon the God of Storms enters the battlefield, reveal the top 9 cards of your library. You may exile up to 5 instant, sorcery, or Ganon cards from among them. When Ganon leaves the battlefield, you return all the cards exiled with Ganon the God of Storms to your hand, and then you play 6 mana to exile it. So it's an enchantment storm card. And this can... I don't think this has creature or card type Ganon. Because if this had card type Ganon and you could cast this and find itself, this card would be absurd. Because... oh, it's not legendary. What are you guys doing to me? So I think if you want to fix this card, make it a legendary enchantment with the Ganon card type. And then this goes for the top 5 instant or sorcery cards. And then you can't get them back until you find another Ganon card. And then you play the second Ganon card. And then due to legend rule, this one leaves and you get those cards back. And then you unlock the next Ganon card. I think that would be a better card design. Both of these are pretty pretty unplayable, I think. Just because of the design. But I think this one, it could actually work if you made the changes I said. So this one wins over this one, but I much prefer the artwork on this one. Next up, we have some bear cards. The one on the right was not actually an official submission, but I saw it and I liked it so much I just had to include it. So it's Barricade, 3 in a red. Defender, when it dies, each player puts a 2/2 bear creature token onto the battlefield. The flavor text is, what in blazes? I just love this card. I like the idea of giving everyone bears. I would play this in Commander, no problem. And the artwork is great too. Bear Force 1, I think this is a joke that I've heard before, but I quite like the idea of it. So it's a 5 mana 12/12, Flying Menace legendary artifact. So it does not enter the battlefield as a creature. And when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 2/2 bear pilot creature token. And then for 5 mana, if you arrange 5 bears into the shape of an airplane, Bear Force 1 becomes a legendary artifact vehicle and can attack. And then you tap the creatures that are arranged into the plane because they essentially crew the vehicle. So I think this card's actually pretty balanced. At the base rate, it's 5 mana for 2 2/2 bears. And then you need 5 bears to turn this into a giant plane and kill them. In multiples, it kind of works because each other one can give you bears. So I think overall, this is kind of a better designed card. This card's fun, but it's like, you know, it's mostly fun. Whereas this one's like something I could see being played somewhere, which I quite approve. Up next, we have the Auroch Lord versus Bane of the Titans. Auroch Lord being a lot of green and any other cards you want. It's a 4/4 trample. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an Auroch card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And when it attacks, each attacking Auroch gets +1/+1 equal to the number of attacking Aurochs you control. So this card is a pretty good last card to find off in Aurochs, because this was made after Aurochs Herd. I think I played it in Pauper, and we, in my Discord, made some memes about it. And so this is the end-all be-all of Aurochs. Seems like a pretty sweet card. The mana cost is hard to accomplish. And then we have Bane of the Titans. It's an instant for 7 mana. You create 15 1/1 squirrels, and creatures you control gain flying until end of turn. And the flavor text is, sometimes salvation comes in the smallest of forms. And the artwork is actually squirrels taking down an Eldrazi. So I really like the flavor of this. Obviously, the idea is that the 15 squirrels block Emrakul. And then you just trade off. So I think from a flavor perspective, I'm giving Bane of the Titans thing over Auroch Lord. I'm not sure how balanced making 15 squirrels for 7 mana is. That seems kind of overpowered. So from a balance perspective, this is like kind of strong. I think you might want to make it cost more mana, but I'm still down for it. Up next, we have 2 cards that are kind of a commentary on that the Planeswalkers Wizards has printed. We'll start with Oko Thief of Frowns, obviously play on Oko Thief of Crowns. But this card's more friendly. It's +2, each player makes a food token. +1, each player makes an elf. And -5, each player picks a banned card from outside the game. They change the text to make it fun and balanced, then they may cast it without paying its cost. Just a lot of fun. I think there's obviously still a way to break this card. I'm not sure how, but a 3 mana Planeswalker that gives each player a food. If your deck is built to abuse food better than theirs, this card somehow could still end up broken. But I do like it more than the original Oko. Then there's B-List Planeswalker, which is 3 colorless. And it's just kind of making fun of the fact that all Planeswalkers have the same template, where it's like their +1 is some effect that draws you like a specific card, whether it's like reveal the top card and get creatures or lands, or like draw a card and reveal it if it's a instant or sorcery, you get to draw it, things like that. And then the -2 is like a specific destroy effect. And then the ultimate is you will still win the game, but your opponents may continue to take game actions. I like this card quite a bit because it's just kind of making fun of how every single 5-drop Planeswalker printed that's not like Oko status, that's essentially the templating. So I think from a design perspective, B-list Planeswalker is funny. Oko, I think, is obviously more playable because this card doesn't actually do anything on its own. So I'm just going to say that they're both equal and they're both friendly. Now, following that theme, there are more cards that are modifications of historically very strong cards. I'm not certain that Swag Tusk was an original creation. I feel like I've seen this before, so I don't think I can rate this card effectively, but I think the Barricade card was made by the same person. So if this was not original, then you can use Barricade or whatever. This is a 7-mana Shroud. When it leaves the battlefield, put a 5/3 Thragtusk creature token on the battlefield. Which then has the Thragtusk effect. So it's like a double Thragtusk. I do like the design of it. Shroud seems pretty extreme. This card's like almost impossible to kill, but I do like that. Then we have Golos Tired Pilgrim. When it enters the battlefield, exile the top 3 cards of your library, and until end of turn you may play them without paying their mana cost. That's so it's just the opposite of Golos. I guess the power toughness is also reversed. And then for all of this mana, you can search your library for 1 land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I honestly like Golos Tired Pilgrim more than Swag Tusk, just because this is like really funny how, first of all, how broken this would be. 5 mana, just cast things without paying the mana cost is like kind of stupid, but I do like that this is just literally the opposite of Golos. So I like that more. Swag Tusk is also a really sweet design though. Both of these are very cool cards, and I love them both so much. Up next is Karl and Karl the Killer. If you've never seen the Llamas with Hats YouTube video, first of all, go watch the Llamas with Hats YouTube video. Then come back and look at this. He's a Mardu Colors 2/3 haste. You can sacrifice a human to put a kill counter on him. Whenever a human is put in the graveyard, its owner creates an 0/1 skeleton token with Defender, and then if he has 5 or more kill counters, transform him. So that's kind of a lot to ask, but he has a 3-mana 2/3. And then the flip side, his +2 makes him a 2/3 llama creature with haste and indestructible, so he just turns into Karl basically. And then he deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of humans in your graveyard, and then destroy all creatures except for skeleton tokens with Defender. Seems fun, actually pretty balanced. I don't think this card is anywhere near overpowered, but I do like it. I think you could do a little bit more with the skeleton tokens, right? Because you make skeletons, but they don't really do anything for you after they transform. So I think if you're going to redesign this, I would like to get some benefit from, like, you sacrifice them, you make skeletons, because he creates a meat dragon out of orphans. And, you could have him, like, be able to generate a meat dragon as his ultimate or something like that, if you have enough skeletons. So I think I would like to see that play into it a little bit more. But from a flavor perspective, obviously, I'm going to appreciate Karl. All right, in second place for the funny tokens is Questing Beast Within. I love this card so much. The art is great. The fact that it's an extended card just looks funny, and then it is also making fun of how ridiculous the text on Questing Beast is. So that's great. The flavor text is awesome. They even like blurred out some of the stuff. I love the design of this card so much. So it's 3 mana. It is Beast Within. And then it turns whatever you destroyed into Questing Beast, a 4/4 legendary green beast creature with vigilance, death, haste. And Questing Beast can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. Whenever Questing Beast deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. This card's perfect in every way. I love it. It's just not the most playable. Actually, I think I'm going to make this joint first. This card's so good. I love this card. So this is going to be joint first, and I guess I'll bring in the card that was originally first, but I changed my mind. They're both equally awesome. That is the Party Pooper. So this is a 5-mana 3/5 menace. The artwork is fantastic. I guess Mike Burns made this, so well done. And when this enters the battlefield, destroy target party. So it's just fun. With the party mechanic, this would be a great card to exist. You get to destroy all of them. I feel like it should be able to destroy a subset of a party as well, because a party pooper can break up a full party and just a small gathering of people. So I would say maybe destroy any number of members from target party, but I don't know. Either way, the card is awesome and really funny. The art is perfect. Both of these cards, joint first place in the funny category. I love them so much. Up next, we have the spicy category, and here's where things get pretty weird. So someone gave me this card and just said, please try and evaluate this. I haven't really read it yet, so you're going to get my live evaluation of the card here. So it's a legendary land. Taps to add 1 mana of any color, shared between permanents you and your opponent's control. Okay. And then tap all permanents you control, empty your mana pool, sacrifice 5 lands, sacrifice 4 creatures, sacrifice 3 artifacts, 2 enchantments, and a planeswalker to transform this. Okay, that's a hefty cost to pay. I'm already going to say this card's unplayable. Well, aside from, I guess, just being able to tap it for mana is pretty good. So it's like a reflecting pool-ish. And then the flip side is Shroud Indestructible Shadow. It's a 3/7. If a creature with a creature type would deal combat damage, instead that creature loses all creature types and becomes a 1/1. Okay. And then that includes, I guess this does not have a creature type. And then 10 mana, return all permanents from all graveyards to the battlefield, then destroy all permanents that didn't enter the battlefield this turn. Gain control of the Unknowable. Any player may activate this ability. What? What? I don't even know what this card does. I can definitely say you're almost never going to be activated to flip, but let's say you have enough mana, you spend all of this, you sacrifice all of these things, and you flip it. The creature dealing combat damage thing becoming a 1/1 is quite strange, but then you activate this for 10. So you have to flip this, activate this for 10, and then you can get back all the stuff you sacrificed and then destroy all the other permanents. Okay, I think the design is quite weird. There's a lot of things going on up here, Shroud Indestructible Shadow and stuff. Basically, if you're playing this card, it's going to be a legendary land that is kind of like a reflecting pool. And then all of this other stuff you're almost never going to activate. So I would say this card is needlessly complex. Up next, we have Mana Fixing, which is target player scries 2, then draws 2. That player must choose a creature they control and exile it. And then they can search the library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. And if they can't, they discard 2 cards. So you choose a player. They get to scry 2, draw 2. This is kind of like an edict effect, like Path to Exile Edict, which is pretty unique. But if they don't have a creature, then they have to discard 2 cards. I think the discard, I've never seen blue-white have discard. I guess maybe looting. I really like the artwork for this one, so that's good. But I think overall this card is just doing like a lot of things that aren't necessarily synergistic. Like scry 2, draw 2, and then discard is fine, but they have to choose a creature they control and exile it, get a land, is kind of weird. Because I think most of the time you're going to want to cast this on yourself. And if it's a 2 mana scry 2, draw 2, exile a creature and get a land, that seems way too strong. If you start with like a mana elf or something, that seems absurd. So I think this card is probably just too strong and a little bit too complicated to see play. Then we have Xeno of Alea. Permanents without a calculus counter cannot be tapped or untapped. And then the beginning of each player's end step, they may put a calculus counter on a permanent. So, I mean, this enters the battlefield and nobody can tap lands for mana. And then at each end step, they can start tapping lands for mana. I think this card would lead to really, really unfun games. I mean, at the very worst, it's like a Winter Orb, because they can only untap 1 per turn. So I think this card is like designed a little bit better than Mana Fixing, but I would much prefer to play with Mana Fixing over Xeno. Just because like not untapping lands unless you specifically kill like this card seems not like the most fun thing to me, but it's very strong. It's a very strong effect. All right, up next we have Wonderful World. It's WUBRG Legendary Enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them with less colors than the casted spell without paying its mana cost, but the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in any order. That actually seems pretty fun. So if you cast a 5 mana spell, or like all of the color spell, then you can cast a 4 color spell, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then 0. I will say, I'm imagining that they meant to say whenever you cast a spell, not like from your hand maybe, not from Wonderful World, because as it's currently stated, if you cast a 5 color spell, you can just keep revealing cards from the top of your library until you like cast a million things. So I'm going to go under that assumption where you have to cast spells from your hand. I think this card is still very broken, probably way too good to see play, but it would be very fun in Commander. I would like to have this card exist, but probably not in a competitive format where you could just cast Preordain and hit Emrakul. So Right? Yeah, because Emrakul is completely colorless. So you just put 4 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn and then a bunch of Preordains and Brainstorms, and then you just win. So from a balance perspective, not the best card. From a fun perspective, definitely very fun. This card is kind of the opposite. Orb of Endless Agony, 6 mana artifact. You may play land cards from your graveyard. Lands you control have sacrificed this land, destroy target land. So it turns everything into strip mines and Crucible of Worlds. I love this. I would like to play this in like Vintage Cube. It'd be pretty fun. 6 mana is probably still not enough for this to be balanced, but I guess actually maybe it's fine. I think this card's a little bit more balanced, even though it would not be fun in the slightest. This card's more fun, but not quite balanced. So I'm gonna edge up fun over balance here because this is the spicy category. And this card does a lot of cool things. Up next, we have 2 very overpowered counter spells. These cards are very good. So it's 1 white, counter target creature spell unless they pay 2. So it's like miscalc for creatures. If that spell is countered this way, put it on the bottom of its owner's library and you draw a card. So it's like miscalc for creatures. It goes on the bottom and you get to draw. Really strong effect. Upper hand, X blue, counter target spell if its converted mana cost is less than or equal to the spell, draw a card. This card, it might not seem so strong at first glance. Maybe it does, but for blue, this counters anything 1 or less and draws a card. It's so good because you're trading even on mana at the worst case. Because it's a lot of effects like this say counter target spell with converted mana cost X, and that's worse because you're trading down on tempo. So like if you want to counter a 1-drop, you have to spend 2 mana. But this, you don't have to do that. You just spend blue. And then you counter a 1-drop or counter Black Lotus for 1. The other thing is it has draw card tacked onto it. I think this card would definitely see vintage play. From a power level perspective, I actually think this card is much stronger than Lord's Levy. From a balance perspective, I think Lord's Levy is more balanced, but they're both like very, very broken. So I think I like Upper Hand more. I would rather have this card exist, but I do appreciate white getting some unique counter spells. All right, here we have some creatures. First, we have Jagar, King of Rocks. Both of these are plays on Wingmate Rock and Siege Rhino, which I'll play, I think, together. I'm not sure if they're out during the same time. This is a 3/4 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile any number of non-token creatures that attack this turn. And for each creature exiled this way, you make a 3/4 bird. And then at the end of combat on your turn, if a creature you control is flying attacked, you gain 5 life. So a pretty cool card, a 3/4 flyer. I will say, if you can cheat this out at instant speed, this card goes from like a pretty good way to upgrade your birds to like just the most broken thing I've ever seen in my life. Imagine if you Aether Vial this into play after like during an opponent's attack. You can, after they've declared attackers, you exile all of their creatures and make a bunch of 3/4 birds. But that's or you can, oh my gosh, wait, you can cloud shift this or like ephemerate this during their combat. That seems insane. So this card, I think, I don't know if that was intended that you could flicker it and just completely decimate someone's attackers and get a bunch of birds. For that reason, I think this card is, well, it's very good for that reason because nobody can attack into you ever. So I'm probably gonna say this card's better. What does Ralbarg do? 6 mana, 4/5 trample, and it turns all of your rhinos into siege rhinos. I really like that one actually. This one's much more balanced. I could see this card get played. I don't know how many rhinos there are, but I definitely am down for the endless siege rhino deck. So I think from a balance and design perspective, this card is, overall there. From a spice perspective, though, I think Jaguar King of Rocks is spicier because you get exile all non-token attackers, make a 3/4 bird token for each creature exiled this way. That seems good. Up next, so I did ask my viewers to try and use complex numbers in their card design. So we have 2 people who actually stepped up to the challenge, and we're gonna go through these cards together. Eccentric Mathematician. It's 3+I loyalty, and it's +1 puts a +10x +10x counter on up to 1 target creature, where X is Champernowne's constant. In base 10, Champernowne's constant is about 0.123. So this would give them +1.2 +1.2 essentially. So it's similar to a +1/+1 counter. Then the -2 is target creature loses all abilities and has base power and toughness equal to Titan's constant. So I just looked it up. This constant is very complicated. It is between 0 and 1, and I don't want to go into it too much, but there's quite a bit of variance in that. And then, so I'm going to say this essentially turns all creatures into like 0.5, 0.5 power toughness, roughly is what it would end up doing. And then all creatures you control become complex, split them into a real and imaginary part. It doesn't really describe how this works, like how real and imaginary work. Like, do you need to deal real plus imaginary damage to kill a creature? Because then, like, you could have a 1-0 with 1 imaginary, and then, like, nothing could die. And how do you split them? So I think this card is kind of needlessly complex for... It's essentially a planeswalker that gives +1/+1, turns things into 0.5/0.5. And then the ultimate, I still don't quite understand how that works, because it doesn't describe how you split them. I'm guessing this would be part of a set where like things matter, but I'm gonna be honest, not a biggest fan of this card. Let's hope complicated analysis is a little bit better. Blue. When it enters the battlefield, associate a random Gaussian integer x with the magnitude of the real of x is less than 2 and the imaginary is less than x of 2 with each creature. Okay, but it's a random integer. So that's essentially looking at the two-dimensional integer lattice. If you think of like a 2D grid with points at x, y, you can think of this as basically saying choose an xy coordinate such that the x and the y coordinate is less than 2. So because it's integers, the maximum value will be 1. So you can get 1, 0, -1, and then I, 0, -I, and then any combination therein. So you get, I guess, 9 combinations, I think. No, there's more than that. Hang on. No. Yeah, 9. It's so you choose one of 9 possible locations, and you assign that to the creature. And creatures associated with the number have +x real plus imaginary x. But imaginary x can be negative, so there is a good chance that your creature is going to lose 1 toughness and potentially die. So that's worth mentioning. In fact, it's a 30% chance that your creature will lose toughness. And then you tap 2 untapped creatures you control with associated numbers x and y respectively. And then you associate x, y with each of those creatures. Okay, this is actually really cool. So by associating x, y with each of those creatures, this lets you scale up outside of your starting like 9 points within the integer lattice. So like, let's say your creatures are 1 + I and 1 + I. If you multiply those together, you get 1 by 1 times 1, and then I times I is -1. So those cancel out, and you just end up with 2i. And so now your creatures have exceeded or branched out of your starting point within the lattice. And then if you associate, 2i with someone who has -I, now your creatures get the real part of 2. And so you can, kind of build your own you can complete the lattice by associating all the creatures together and branching out from your starting +1 - 1. So I actually really like this card a lot, because it's like, you could, in theory, if you have enough tokens, like associate one creature with each point along the lattice and just get like massively large creatures. The problem I guess I have is anytime you get large negative imaginary numbers, your creature is just going to die. So I guess I don't know how you solve that problem and allow your creatures to survive this, but if you have other Anthem effects that scale in the same way as this one does, then you can do it. I like this card a lot. As far as playability goes, I don't know how many like triple blue creature based decks there are. But it's a very cool card. So sorry, Eccentric Mathematician. I think this card is essentially putting constants on there for the sake of being complex. This card is complex, but it's actually functional and it has an effect. The biggest downside I see is that the imaginary part can, take away power. So maybe you do like the absolute value of the imaginary part or something like that could work. Either way, really cool card. This card, I'm just going to give it the flavor win of mathematical cards. I don't think I can give it the spicy win because, like, this is just for me nerding out over math, not necessarily the most interesting to play with. So you win the moral victory, but you're not winning the overall spicy category, and I think that seems fair. All right, moving on. We have 2 not necessarily similar cards, but I just grouped them together because. Here we have Solemn Repealer, 1 blue-white, 1/1 flash flying fairy. That's never a good sign. When this enters the battlefield, put target spell or non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. For the rest of the game, whenever that player casts a spell with the same names that spell are permanent, they draw a card. I think this card is unbelievably strong in any tempo matchup because, let me think about this. So you can target your own stuff and just go infinite. I feel like this definitely can set up a lot of infinite combos with your own creatures. I think there's like a lot of creatures that like when they enter the battlefield return a creature, and then you like just play this, bounce your own thing, and then you get like 2 mana draw a card forever with like White Mane Lion or whatever. So that's very strong. Targeting opponent stuff, I think in low-powered formats, this card would probably be fair. But in high-powered formats where tempo is way more important than card advantage, this card would be absurdly strong. It's also a fairy wizard, so you can play this along Spellstutter Sprite. So then you can like use this to bounce any of the big spells they play. Then you Spellstutter Sprite all the small spells they play, and like they're drawing cards, but they can't resolve anything because you're spending 2 mana to negate their entire turn. So I think this card's a cool design, but it's way, way too strong to see play. Next up is Wild Pulse. Counter target spell. If a spell countered this way would have countered a spell, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. That just seems fun. I actually like that card a lot. I don't really have a category for fun. I guess I should have done that. But this card is awesome. It's 4 mana counter thing, and if you're winning a counter award, you get to cheat something out for free. Sweet card, great design. If there was a fun category, I think this would definitely be top 3. Unfortunately, it's spicy category, so you're, I think, definitely above the top half of spice. All right, up next we have Gil the Fabulous and Impulsive Consultation. So Gil says, until your next turn, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless they play once. You get Rhystic Study, choose a permanent they phase out, and then you get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts a spell, draw a card, and you may cast a card from your hand without paying its mana cost. The ultimate's very strong. On a 3 mana Planeswalker, you could easily get up there in ultimate, so I think this card is way too strong to like, well, I've seen stronger Planeswalkers be printed, but this card's very good because you just uptick in Rhystic Study every turn, and then you ultimate and win the game from there. So very strong card. Not the most unique or spicy because all of these effects have existed before, but I like the overall effect of a card for like Commander. Impulsive Consultation. Choose one, search your library for a card and exile it, then shuffle your library. So it's like a Demonic Tutor, but you have to cast it right away. And then you may choose a card you own from outside the game and exile it. You can cast that until the end of your next turn. Oh, until your next turn. That's really good, actually. So 5 mana you can entwine. I like this card a lot, actually. I might also include this in the balanced section. This card's very good, very cool. Yeah, I just like this card a lot. I think I'm probably going to end up putting this in 3rd place, even though the semifinals are next, but I did the ordering wrong. I like this card more than the next 2 cards I'm going to show, I think. All right, these are the semifinals of the spicy category. We have Echoes of the Mind, 5 mana enchantment. When you draw a card, besides the first card you've drawn this turn, you may draw an additional card on the next upkeep. So the fact that this card draw is delayed is quite nice because let's say you draw your first turn, then you cast like Preordain, you draw. Then during your next turn, you get to draw another card. And that triggers Echoes of the Mind again. So basically, every time you draw an extra card during a turn, that is cumulative for the rest of the game. So like if you cast Preordain one turn, the next turn you draw 2 cards, then you cast Preordain that turn, the next turn you draw 3 cards, and then you're just drawing 3 cards every turn for the rest of the game. So I might want to make this card cost more mana because like it would scale very, very quickly. But the effect is really cool and I do like it. And then there's Fragment Language Scavenger. You may choose up to 1 World of Rules text from each other non-land permanent you control to complete incomplete sentences. And then when it enters the battlefield, blank. So if you have a lot of cool things in here, you can make some ridiculous effects happen with this card. So from a spice level, I think it's great. I think the biggest reason like these 2 cards aren't in the finals is they take a bit of setup, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like it's really hard for me to differentiate between cards I like. So like the one I showed previously and these 2 and probably all the cards that are win, like I like them all. But I do have to choose an ultimate winner. So these cards are awesome, but the next cards I like just slightly more. In 2nd place, we have Gambling House. So it's a colorless land, adds colors to your mana pool. And then you tap it, discard 3 coins, flip a coin. If you win that flip, you search your library for a card and put that card in your hand. And then whenever you flip a coin, if you win the flip, untap Gambling House. So this card is really fun. It's not discard at random, so you can make educated, like if you have a lot of lands, you can try and trade them for something. In casual format, this card would be really fun because there's a lot of other cards that flip coins. So you can like get a bunch of mana off Gambling House if you're playing like, what is it, Crarch Thumb or something that like lets you double flip every time you flip a coin. So this card's really cool. I like the trade-off of discarding cards to get a card like from your hand. It's a land, so it's just very strong. And honestly, there are a lot of decks where just tap, discard 3 cards on a land would be so playable, like in Dredge. So I think this card's very strong, very spicy. But for me, the winner here is Fate Broker. Blue, red flash. When Fate Broker enters the battlefield, target player gains control of target activated or trigger ability. That player may choose new targets for that ability. So I'm giving this one the win, not just because of spice, but it's also like, this is a card that could definitely see play. So it's like a balanced spice, and it's a unique effect that I don't think I've ever seen before. But you can get some really, really bad activated abilities. Like there are some that are like, phase the untouchable, you lose the game. Give that to your opponent, you just win. Things like that. I would like to see it maybe also be able to give effects, but that might be too strong. But just overall, this card design is great. The artwork is fantastic. Yeah, just well done. This is my favorite card out of all the spice. All right, now we're on to the balanced. And like, there's definitely going to be overlap between categories. I'm not perfect at splitting them. My criteria for balanced is cards that like are essentially designed to be played rather than just like a cool effect or whatever. So although like this card, for example, is funny, I think this is a pretty reasonable effect like to actually play in real life. So that's why it's in balanced instead of funny. But it's a 2-mana 2/1. When it dies, return him to the battlefield and it becomes a maggot. And then he melds with Swamp Frog. Swamp Frog, the beginning of combat on your turn, if you both own a creature, Swamp Frog, and a maggot creature, named Yarkle Ambitious Lieutenant, you exile them and then you get Yargle the Frog Spirit, haste, first strike, wither, 5/3. He's come to Bargle, your soul he will gargle. He is very largle. It's Frog Spirit Yargle. So this is a balanced card that I also think is very funny. So this would be like maybe top 5 of the funny cards, but it's also pretty good in the balanced category. So this is the type of card that will be competing for like overall, for example. But overall, I mean, this card, I like it a lot. Up next, we have 2 black cards. I'm going to start with Time of Mourning. I don't quite get this card, but it is black instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, pay half your life rounded up. Your opponent may not cast spells until your next turn. And if a creature you control was destroyed by an opponent this turn, take an extra turn after this one. So I'm not quite certain of what the situation is you would play this. I guess if they cast like Damnation, you play this, they kill your creature, you get 2 extra turns. And they can't play anything at the end of turn. So actually, this card maybe is not that balanced. Now that I'm thinking about it, because your opponent like plays a kill spell. Your creature dies, then you cast this, they can't do anything else, and then you get 2 turns in a row. So, you know what? This card should be in spicy. It's not that balanced, but I do quite like the effect. It's just a little bit complex. Like, this templating is not the most intuitive. Mostly your opponent may not cast creature spells until your next turn part of it. I think if you just had, if a creature was destroyed, take an extra turn and pay life, that could maybe be worth playing. And then we have Feed on Fear, a black enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, you gain life for each untapped creature your opponents control. This card, I'm guessing it's for multiplayer, and Commander seems very good, especially if you have something that needs life gain triggers. Anything that triggers at each turn, I think just in multiplayer gets way better than you might think. Even if opponents like just playing a 1/1 creature, you're going to get 1 life every upkeep, and if you have like a Johnny's Pridemate or, you know, something that makes tokens when you gain life, this can go crazy. But in Commander, a lot of times they're going to have like 4 or 5 or 10 creatures in play. And this is going to gain you an obscene amount of life. So I think this card, at its mana cost, is probably way too good. If this was on a creature where it would die when a board gets too clogged, I could see it being played. But I don't know if this is the most balanced, but I could be wrong. Because gaining life, like, there are more strong effects than that. I think maybe if it triggered like just during your end step, you could do it for a black, or if you want to trigger each end step, you would need to make it cost like triple black or something that's harder to cast. Next we have anti Miltech Mill Orb, blue black. So cards being milled lose all abilities. So I think the intention of this was to stop like Emrakul and Progenitus from reshuffling graveyard. So they can't like, or Gaia's Blessing or whatever. The spell that when it enters your graveyard reshuffle. So if you play this, they just like can't reshuffle their deck. And then X, each player mills X factorial cards. I think 0 factorial is 1. So most of the time, this is just going to mill 1 card every turn. So this is actually a very good card in a mill deck because it's blue-black, mill 1 every turn, essentially. 1 factorial is also 1, I think. So for 4 mana, you can also mill 1. And then for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For 8 mana, you can mill 2. So essentially, this is just blue-black, mill 1 every turn. Cards lose all abilities, which is still a pretty good, relatively balanced card. I just think the triple X factorial is kind of needlessly complex. Just an Egg, 4 mana, 0/1. When Just an Egg dies, if it was dealt 5 or more damage this turn, create Merit Lage, a legendary 20/20 black avatar creature token with flying, indestructible. There's a lot of effects like this. This is a bit more flavorful because you get Merit Lage. It's pretty balanced because you have to do 5 damage to it. So I think overall this is a balanced card. I just have seen a lot of effects. I mean, Egg effects are like a thing in Magic. It is nice that it does hatch Merit Lage, though. That's pretty fun. Alright, now we have Wave Form Elemental. 3 mana, flying 1/1. You can kill it. +1/+1 or -1/-1 until end of turn. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So this seems pretty strong, actually. So it's a 3 mana 1/1 flyer. If you play a land, it becomes a 4/4. If you play a fetch land, it becomes a 7/7 flyer for 3 mana. So I don't know if this is the most balanced card, because let's say you play this on turn 3. Turn 4, you play and crack a fetch. This becomes a 7/7, and then you spend 3 mana or 4 mana. You can make this hit for 11 damage. I'm sure something like this will be printed eventually. And it's close to balanced. I think maybe if you made it cost 1 less and made it get +2/+2, that could work. The biggest problem here is flying. If this was on a ground creature, this effect would be no problem. But the fact that it is flying, maybe I'm overvaluing it. Maybe this is just good enough. Actually, yeah, maybe this is fine. But it's on the brink of being maybe too good. And then there's time desynchronization. 1 white. Permanents enter the battlefield phased out. So this stops enter the battlefield effects. So you can do like this plus Phyrexian Juggernaut, I believe. Which is pretty cool. I think an effect like this probably should exist. So I actually like this one quite a bit. So although I'm showing it earlier, I think I'm valuing this one higher than maybe some of the other future ones I'm showing. So great design. Up next, more white cards. A Crowan's Last Stand. A lot of white card cost in here. Creatures you control get +3/+3, and then -1/-1 for each card in your hand. Very balanced, not the most exciting. It is a common. This is kind of weird for a common. Maybe they meant to put it as a higher rarity. I think this card's good, balanced, not the most broken thing. I think there's a 5 mana flash enchantment that gives your creatures +3/+3, or maybe it's +2/+2. So this is an effect that has existed. I like the tension between this, but I think ultimately this would be not an amazing card. Then we have Andre the Blacksmith, 3 mana 2/3. This is from Dark Souls, for those who don't know. Great game, definitely worth playing. And the new Demon Souls just came out too. So that's fun. Equipped creatures get +X/+0, where X is the number of equipment they have equipped to them. Okay, and then you give equipped creatures First Strike, Lifelink, or Menace. I feel like he should definitely be legendary. This would be kind of a fun commander to have. So I think legendary creature would make this way more fun. The effect is totally acceptable. Pretty fun. So I like this card more than a Crowan's Last Stand. It's unique, flavorful. Mostly I just like Andre the Blacksmith, but the effect is nice too. Now we have some big green card draw spells. Season of Flourishing. This is 9 mana sorcery. Take an extra turn after this one. If you would draw a card during that turn, draw 2. And your mana taps for double. And then you exile this. This card is unbelievably strong. Definitely in Commander. Like, if you can't win off of this, you're gonna have a bad time. Like, you just cast this, cast Time Twister, and win. So this is essentially 9 mana win the game, which is fine, I think, for 9 mana, especially with how hard it is to cheat out sorcery. So I think this card, it's in the balanced category, but it's also pretty spicy. So from a spice perspective, I like it. From a balance perspective, I like it. So this Might move into the overall competition challenge because it's quite good. Verdant Revelation. The artwork is amazing here. I don't know where the actual art comes from, but it's great. Choose one or both. Draw cards equal to the number of creatures you control, or create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each card in your hand. And then you can pay an additional one as you cast it to reverse the order. So you can either, if you have a lot of creatures, actually, I like the idea of reversal, because if let's think about this. If you have a lot of cards in your hand, you make saplings and then draw a bunch of cards. Or if you need more cards, you do that. If you need more creatures, you draw and then make saplings. Overall, this is actually a really fun and balanced card. So I actually really like both of these, and they'll probably be in contention for the overall win record as well. I haven't exactly planned how I'm going to do that yet, but if I don't mention them, just know they're still very good cards. Up next, we have some good cards for Pauper. Even Wind Scout, 2 mana, 1/2 flyer. Tap 2 other white creatures you control. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can put a creature or land card from among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom. I think this is a totally perfectly fine card to put in Pauper. Be fine to play in Draft. I actually like this card a lot. It's pretty balanced, and this is the type of effect white I could get used to white having some type of card advantage like this. So I like this card quite a bit. And then Strategic Development. This costs 1 less for each creature that attacks this turn. Draw 3 cards. This card's actually pretty good. 5 mana instant draw 3 is already like very good. So the fact that it gets cheaper when creatures attack, I think makes this not so balanced. Because like, let's say you attack with 2 creatures, which is not the most unlikely thing, or your opponent attacks you with 2 creatures. This is suddenly an instant speed 3 mana draw 3. That's really strong. So I think from a balance perspective, this needed to be like maybe double blue, maybe triple blue, or have like a higher starting cost. Just think about like Treasure Cruise, right? People that cost 8 and you can make it cheaper quite a bit. So maybe 1 or 2 more mana on this would make it more fair. I like the idea, but I think it needs a bit more tweaking for balance, just because 5 mana draw 3 instant like is already playable. Next we have, by the way, these are in not really a particular order. They're like generally an increasing order of like rank. Like the later they are on, the better they are, in my opinion. But I'm really bad at sorting between like cards that are all very fun. So like if I show 2 cards now and then 2 worse cards later, like in my mind, they're very similar. Invaluable Knowledge, 4 mana, scry 2, then draw 2 cards. So 4 mana, scry 2, draw 2 instant, already pretty good. Cycling 2, when you cycle it, scry 1, draw 1. So that's pretty fun. And the person who posted this said that this would be part of a cycle. So I guess one would probably be like do 2 damage, and then when you cycle it would do like 1 damage or things like that. So I like the idea of it. I think cards like this already exist, but I would be very happy with this card just being a Magic card that exists in the format. And then Tarvok Jund Anarchist, cool artwork. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on has haste. And then X, green, black, green, black. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield, it gains Devour X. So this is pretty cool. Devour X is a fun mechanic. If you have a lot of mana, you can just make your creatures absolutely massive and have haste and just swing out. So it'd be a really fun commander. It's pretty balanced, not the most broken. It's just like, it's a real card that could potentially see play. So here are 2 cards that actually, oddly enough, ended up having like similar mechanics from different designers, which is cool. Elk's Drana Death Dealer. I really like the way this card looks, the name. I think this is one of the best overall like aesthetically designed cards. Someone definitely put a lot of time into this. It's a legendary creature demon, flying first strike. When it enters the battlefield, if you lost life this turn, sacrifice it. So basically, if you paid Phyrexian mana, you sack it. And then when it leaves the battlefield, choose 1 or all. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy, discard 2 cards, add double black to your mana pool. So it just does a lot of cool things. Seems quite balanced. There's 2 damage to a random opponent, maybe? Discard 2 cards. I'm guessing, so at the very worst, this is black, 2 life, add double black, discard 2 cards. Maybe I don't play like black so much in Commander, so there's probably a lot of like cool enablers that this would help with. But I don't quite understand what each of these effects would be necessarily useful for. But the fact that this is such a flexible card tells me there's got to be a home for it. And it just looks awesome. So I really enjoy this card, even if I personally don't completely understand it. And then there's Crippling Sacrifice, Black Phyrexian. Destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost X or less, where X is the amount of life you have lost this turn. So I'm imagining the intention was that you could kill a 2-drop for 1 Phyrexian. I don't know the ruling specifically if this would let you target a 2-drop, because in order to cast this spell, you would need to have a valid target. So I'm going to rate this assuming that Phyrexian mana for 2 lets you kill a 2-drop. Then I think this card is great, because you can like scale it up, right? If you've taken a bunch of damage, you can use this to kill something for pretty cheap. Yeah, I think really cool card. I just don't know the ruling on Phyrexian mana when you're spending X. Oh, I see. It says if it has converted mana cost. Yeah, then it's totally fine. I thought X was in the targeting, but yeah, this works then, because you destroy target creature if it has a converted mana cost. So you can target anything. Okay, this card is well designed. I like the effect. I'd be happy with this card existing too. It's kind of like an interesting dismember that could end up requiring less life. Now we have 2 very dissimilar cards. Faithful Prey Tender. Flash. If opponent would gain life, instead you search your library for a plains card, put on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. This feels almost like a red effect, like maybe red-white. But I guess that's kind of the problem with white, is like nothing feels like it should be a fully white effect. So I think this card existing would be fine. It seems good. The problem is there's a lot of things that trigger a bunch of times, and this would just give you like infinite planes. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's just like good enough in a multiplayer format where this just like has to die immediately. So I think this card is totally fine for play and it's pretty fun. Then there's Greater Goblin Guide. I like this card a lot. Red Haste. When it attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put it into your hand. Just like a better Goblin Guide. I really like the design of this. The art's great. Someone definitely put quite a bit of time into like planning all of this out. So this one, from a flavor perspective, is probably one of my top favorites. So this will definitely be in contention for overall card design. Then we have Dominate, Black, Sorcery. Gain control of target creature with converted mana cost 1 or less. You lose 3 life. Why bolt the bird when you can cage it? Very good card. I think this one's definitely balanced. It might even be... Actually, stealing a bird on turn 1 is a really strong play. So at the very least, this would be a good sideboard card against mana elves. But the loss of life does make it kind of risky against like other aggressive decks. But I think this card is overall a very strong card. Nisurak, the Last Broodlord. Esper colors. At the beginning of each upkeep, you may put in a card an opponent owns from exile into their graveyard. And whenever you do that, you create a 1/1 Eldrazi. 2/6 legend. Really balanced card. Not so broken. I guess you can do it at each upkeep. That's actually pretty good. I actually like this card a lot. I didn't know what happened each upkeep. So you make a 1/1 every upkeep. But it is, you know, Esper colors and be your commander. I think this card's quite fun. Dominate's also a very balanced card. So from balance perspective, maybe this... I don't know. I'm going to say they're equal. They're both very good. I like them a lot. It's for me, it's very hard to like say which card is like better when they're all just good. So I'm sorry if I'm like my rating system is isn't the most consistent, but I'm doing all I can. You know, I'm just here to showcase how cool the cards are, really. And on that note, I think a lot of these cards that I'm showing, I guess one's way smaller. Hang on, make you a little bit bigger, Mira. That artwork needs to be shown. We'll compensate. Now it's bigger. Like. A lot of these balance cards are all just like well-designed Magic cards, so essentially most of the ones that I don't say like need some effect are just good. Soil Seeds, for example. White, target player reveals their hand. You choose a land card from it, that player discards that card. Surely you've read the contract before. This card, I would be happy with this card existing. It's not the most fun, but I think it's balanced enough. It gives white like a better tax effect, and this would definitely kind of thematically fit with white. So I really like what this person's done with this card design. I don't think this card would ever get printed because people hate Death and Taxes type effects, which is kind of why white struggles with its color identity. But having something like this could be really good. And then we have Mira, Soul of Reflection, 4 mana flying. Other creatures you control have Myriad, which I believe makes them, when they attack, you make copies and like hit every player. So very good in Commander. This artwork is phenomenal. It's so good. And this is a good way to recur enter the battlefield effects. So this would be a good mono white commander or just a white card in other decks. I really like this. Now we have what are probably the two cutest cards that were submitted. So they definitely both win the cuteness factor. Knight of the Acorn, 4 mana 1/4, trample. Whenever a squirrel knight, whenever this deals combat damage to a player, wait, I guess they mean whenever Knight of the Acorn deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of it, then put a +1/+1 counter on all squirrels you control. And the flavor text is, yeah, it looks cute, just don't let it hit you. It's pretty balanced. It's a squirrel on a frog. What's not to like? This card's very fun. I kind of wish it was legendary, but then this effect wouldn't work. So basically, I just like this would be a really fun commander. You could play like squirrels tribal. So if you could make this legendary and then create like a non-legendary copy of it and then pump up your team, this would be so fun. I almost feel like it could cost 3 mana or maybe even 2. 2 would be pretty extreme actually. So maybe 3 would be the lowest. 4 is fine. It's just not going to like win the game at 4, but the effect is fun and it's very adorable. Then we have Schrodinger's Cat, blue-black, legendary zombie cat, and it has tap, create a token that's a copy of it, and that token entering the battlefield doesn't cause abilities to trigger. I'm not quite certain why that second line of text is there, but essentially this is a creature that has the ability to tap and kill itself, which kind of fits thematically with Schrodinger's Cat. And the flavor text is, the young witch concluded that when choosing a familiar, it is perfectly fine to think inside the box. So thematically, I think this card is quite nice. I think it need, like, it's a little bit short for me to fully understand what's going on, but this would be a fun commander because you can like kill it and like get a lot of like death triggers. It just seems like, I don't know, this doesn't play so much on the alive or dead theme, because I figured the second part of text would like negate the legendary clause, so you can have like 2, but like they're entangled, so one dies if the other dies or something like that. Could be fun. But I still really think this card on itself is fun and just absolutely adorable. And for the finals of the balance category, honestly, I think there are a lot of cards that I showed that could definitely be included in here, like Greater Goblin Guide. I think almost all of the cards that I showed, like, they're just great designs. They're quite balanced. So, like, these are the finals. I'll put that in quotes, but I think these cards are essentially similar to the other ones. These are just ones that, like, in me particular, I got kind of excited about because they're cool. But that doesn't like mean any of the cards are worse. They're all pretty great designs. But we'll go through these 3 in a row. So Rune of Aether is white instant. Exile target creature. If it was not prepared, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So this at the base rate is Cloud Shift. And then prepare is kind of like setting up a trap. So you can exile this face down for 2. And then you may cast this card from exile. You can only prepare as a sorcery, but then you can basically turn this into a Swords to Plowshares. I think if I had to pick an overall winner, this would be the one. It's just really cool and thematic. So yeah, I guess I'll say that's the overall winner, and then these two are kind of tied. The second one is Land Still. It's like Standstill, but with land. So if they play a land, then each of their opponents searches for 3 lands and puts them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffles their library. Maybe, actually, you know, I think this is going to be the order, because Land Still, I didn't realize it was non-basics. So if you play this on turn 2 and your opponent plays a land, you just get to fetch up 3 like wastelands or whatever. I didn't realize that. This card is not the most balanced. I love it. I would definitely want to play this, but it seems maybe a little bit too good if you play this turn 2. Wait, yeah, never mind. This card is not as balanced as I thought. I like it, but think about this. You're playing Land Still. You play this turn 2 on the play, then you just win. Okay. I have mistook. Forget what I said. This is not balanced, right? Turn 2 on the play, you play this. Your opponent can't play lands. If they do, you go up to 5. Yeah, no, this is not balanced. I'm sorry. It's fun and cool. I think you would need... I thought it said, like, if they play a land greater than the number of lands anyone else controls. I think that's how I would balance this. So whenever a land enters the battlefield, if the player who played that land controls more lands than each of their opponents, then they can search for things. Because then, basically, you can, like, force them to break parity, and then this gets more interesting. But turn 2 on the play, this becomes an unbearable card. So yeah, not that one. Mansa Musa, Line of Mali, is a 4 mana 1/4 vigilance legendary. Whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, create a treasure. and then sacrifice a treasure, draw a card. Just a really good balanced white commander. I think this would be a really fun like legend to exist. Probably you could just proxy it and play it in your play groups, and it's a cool card. And so now we finished the 3 individual categories. This is the overall best cards. So I've listed all the cards that at least I personally liked. I gotta mention this a lot. If you know, this is all my personal opinion on these cards. People have different affiliations for different cards. So if I didn't include your card in here, it doesn't mean it's a bad card. It just means like at the time of day or whatever, I was just feeling other cards. But to me, these are the cards that stood out as kind of overall winners. So Knight of the Acorn, Greater Goblin Guide, both just very thematic and fun. I like those a lot. Nisarak, the Last Broodlord, seems relatively balanced because you need to exile things, and if you do, you get tokens. So just that'd be a really cool enablers to exist. Party Pooper was very funny. The effect, you know, definitely could work. And I liked it. It's quite balanced. It would be a playable card. I kind of just wish if it said like destroy up to, you know, if the party isn't complete. Oh, it is. I'm so dumb. It literally says up to right there. Okay, then this card's perfect. Yeah, it's great. So I probably made people mad when I was talking about it before. Ignore me. It says up to Warrior, Rogue, Cleric, and Wizard. So this card's perfect, and I love it. Questing Beast Within, just so funny. Moderately playable, but the cost of giving your opponent a questing beast is pretty high. I like this Verdant Revelation. It's very interesting. The decisions you get from here is a cool mechanic. I don't know if this card is the most balanced with its cost. Maybe it costs less, maybe more, but it seems kind of cool at least. This card is great. Does a lot of things. Would be definitely, I could see this card existing. This card is very flavorful. It does a lot of things. It wins the game. This one I actually am pretty interested in. The more I think about it, like cumulative card draw is like a unique mechanic that I don't think I've seen before. So I actually like this the more I think about it. This is a very good removal spell. Elkdrana, I don't quite understand it, but I feel like there's got to be something here that works. So it's definitely in here, but for me personally, it's probably like the least on this list just because I don't see a use for it aside from like a 3/1 flying first strike. Consultation is a really flavorful mechanic. I like Jagar, King of Rocks. The thought of flickering this, need to make this bigger. The thought of flickering this and exiling all their creatures, making birds sounds awesome. And the Bear Force one is just fun and things. If I had to pick one overall winner, oh, and Fate Broker, yeah. I really like this mechanic too. Just giving your opponent triggered abilities. So let's see. Now I have to pick winners, don't I? Let's go with third place. This is all kind of arbitrary. I think top 3 are essentially tied because these cards are all great, but I'm going to pick arbitrary winners for the sake of it. So here we go. Third place for overall card design, balancing fun, spice, and funny. This is actually hard. I gotta decide here. I like all 3 equal, but I'm choosing one kind of arbitrarily as to be third. And I think third place is going to go to Echoes of the Mind. Very cool effect, very unique. Second place is going to go to Fate Broker. This effect, I mean, I could definitely see this being a real card, and it would be awesome. So I would love for this card to be printed, assuming I'm not missing some broken interaction that I'm missing. First place is the Party Pooper. It's just funny. The art is so good. I like everything about this card. It's good for different reasons than Fate Broker and Eckers are. Mostly this one's very high on the funny thing, but that's for me. I like that the most. So this is my overall winner for best custom design card. But like these are top 3, and every card on here I love a bunch. So thank you for everyone who participated. And if you're interested in doing more things like this, I guess I should read who did this. It was ECP Math who made the Party Pooper. So well done to that person in my Discord. I've chatted with them quite a few times. If you're interested in doing more things like this, join my Discord. It's in the description. And thank you guys for watching.